Alright guys, so we got some updates coming out of Gaza that I want to get to in this video. We have continued reporting on Israel arming and giving cover to gangs inside of Gaza that have been looting aid to then resell on the black market, as well as reportedly working with the IDF on reconnaissance missions in order to fight against Hamas. We also have CNN, shockingly, doing a little bit of real journalism here and debunking many of the Israel lies in regards to the recent aid massacres that we've been covering over the last week or so. And then we're also going to look at this, let's call it propaganda video that was put out by the IDF in order to justify a recent raid on the European hospital inside of Gaza. So we're going to get to all of that, but to set up the context of everything here, let's go ahead and check in with Israel's worst propagandist. Right, this guy here, David Mencer, who is going to flail and squirm around trying to justify in this interview with Channel 4 News Israel's actions over the last week. Let's go ahead and jump into this because it'll sort of set the stage for the rest of what we're going to get into.
Shots were fired this morning. Why is Israel firing at people who you have told it is safe to go and collect aid when they are desperate for food?
First things first, Christian, we're trying to divorce Hamas from the aid distribution system because Hamas were taking the aid, profiting the aid. You know, they were charging poor, hungry Gazans to get this food. We're divorcing the two subjects of Hamas and aid distribution.
Okay, what he actually means here is they are divorcing aid distribution from humanitarian organizations and the United Nations that were previously involved in aid distributions, right? That's what he's actually talking about here. We've mentioned before that the World Food Program director, Cindy McCain, who is the wife of the now deceased John McCain, who was an uber Zionist and supporter of Israel, and she has come out and said there is no evidence that Hamas was mass looting aid in order to resell on the black market for their own benefit. As we're going to get to further on in this video, as I mentioned at the top, there is evidence, however, that Israel is arming and working with gangs inside of Gaza that are looting the aid in order to resell on the black market. So already we're about like 20, 30 seconds into this, and he is spouting off lies as easily as he breathes.
To allow hungry Gazans to get the food directly, to be able to feed their families in an orderly way. Now, to the event this morning, Tuesday, the IDF have said that as crowds move towards along the designated routes towards a humanitarian aid distribution point in northern Gaza, Israeli soldiers identified several of those people. They left the approved access route. The incident occurred approximately 500 meters, half a kilometer from the distribution site. And after issuing warnings, audio, verbal warnings, warning shots were fired in the air. And unfortunately, some of these suspects continued advancing towards our troops in a threatening manner. And so further fire was directed near. No, where there are people desperate for food, we want them to get the food. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. We're trying to get the food to the individuals.
Were they armed?
The IDF will be able to answer that question directly, but let me tell you, our intention is to get as much food to ordinary Gazans. In the video of the incident on Sunday, the IDF have already released that video, and it showed as clear as daylight.
That's a totally separate incident, David.
Right, well, but this is very, very important to put this into context.
That's a totally separate incident in a different place.
No, it's not.
And there's no evidence that was even Hamas.
It's 2 days before. It's 2 days before, and these are Hamas gunmen firing on their own people, Christian.
You don't know that.
Why they're doing that?
There's no evidence for that. And it's in a totally separate incident. Let's keep it to what happened this morning. Let's keep it to what happened this morning. Was anybody armed? Did anybody fire at the IDF?
We can't separate the two. We can't separate the two. Now, the IDF...
Okay, so to get this straight, in order to defend Israel massacring a bunch of, as far as what we know so far, unarmed civilians who were desperately trying to go get aid at these distribution sites that they have helped to set up, in order to defend Israel's actions in that situation, he's bringing up a totally different situation that happened days earlier that the IDF released this video of that, number one, doesn't actually appear to show a Hamas gunman, but more accurately appears to show an armed gunman of one of these gangs that it's alleged that Israel is arming and backing, and it's from an entirely different location as well. So two completely separate events here that don't really connect to each other at all, and he's bringing that up simply to deflect, right? That's the entire reason as to why he's bringing that up, to pretend as if, oh, we just released this video and it's actually Hamas gunmen that were firing at the civilians. No, we know what happened in the aid massacre. It was the IDF that was shooting at these civilians. So it's just, it's a pathetic attempt to deflect from the content of what's actually being discussed in this situation.
The IDF said they were advancing in a threatening manner, and obviously they felt their lives were under threat. The IDF operates under international law, not Channel 4 law, international law.
Right. That's why our prime minister and our former defense minister have arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court. And it's why our state of Israel is currently facing genocide charges at the International Court of Justice. That's what it looks like when you are following in line with international law.
And that's why it's very important. The details of this case are very important. Now, the IDF is aware of these reports and also of casualties, and they are reviewing the incident. But look, a couple of things are clear. We are not preventing the arrival of Gazans. The opposite. We want more humanitarian aid sites, and we want more Gazans to collect that food. We're encouraging it. Now, these warning shots were fired
David, twice now,
Yeah.
desperate people who have been starved for weeks have been shot at while trying to collect aid. You are terrifying the population of Gaza even more. They're too scared now to go to collection points because they know they could be shot at by the IDF.
So that is precisely the Hamas rhetoric that they want you to publish.
So again, I mean, this is why I say he's one of the worst propagandists that Israel has, because like, even as somebody who is a major critic of Israel, I could give you a better line in order to respond to what this journalist was just asking you there, other than just, you're spouting off Hamas talking points, or you're doing the bidding of Hamas, or this is exactly what Hamas wants you to say. I mean, it just comes across as pathetic. It shows me you don't actually have a defense for the allegations of what Israel is accused of doing, right? So you just resort to name calling, essentially, is what that is. So David Mencer, not exactly doing Israel any favors there. Now, again, to follow up on the reporting, here we have from Haaretz, an Israeli outlet here. Their headline is Netanyahu says that Israel is fighting Hamas, quote, in various ways amid claims that it armed ISIS-affiliated Gaza militia. ISIS-affiliated Gaza militia. So some of the details from this report here. They say Israel is providing weapons to a jihadist group in the Gaza Strip affiliated with ISIS. Opposition lawmaker and former defense minister Avigdor Lieberman said on Thursday. So responding to these allegations, he basically admits it here. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said, quote, Israel is working to defeat Hamas in various ways on the recommendation of all heads of the security establishment. So he's not even denying that they are arming an ISIS-affiliated gang inside of Gaza. They continue. They say in an interview with Conbet Public Radio, Lieberman said that similar to how Netanyahu propped up Hamas as a counterweight to the Palestinian Authority, he is now helping to establish a new armed force as a counterweight to Hamas. Now, this is important to recognize because obviously we've talked about many times before that Benjamin Netanyahu essentially has admitted in the past that he was okay with, if not outright supportive of, Hamas being in control of Gaza, because it was basically just a divide and conquer strategy so that there couldn't be a unified Palestinian national movement, right? You would divide the Palestinians in the West Bank under the control of the Palestinian Authority from the Palestinians in Gaza under the control of Hamas. So he was very happy with that situation. And according to this report, he would apparently also be happy with an even more radical or extremist group taking over at least portions of Gaza, because he can use this as an excuse to say, well, now, eventually, maybe you have an ISIS-affiliated group that's running significant portions or aspects of Gaza. So how could we possibly ever have any sort of peace with them, right? This is the game that Israel has been playing for a very long time. Now, they continue. They say last week, two sources told Haaretz that a new militia has recently begun operating in the southern Gaza Strip, saying it is linked to a man identifying himself as Yasser Abu Shabab. Apparently, this is the guy right here. They say Abu Shabab, a member of a large Bedouin family in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, is known as a powerful and well-connected figure in the Gaza Strip. According to sources who spoke with Haaretz, he previously served prison sentences in Hamas-run jails for criminal offenses. And from what I've read, those criminal offenses are related to narcotics, right? The distribution of narcotics. He says at the end of last year, amid a surge in looting of humanitarian aid in southern Gaza, Abu Shabab and his men were widely accused of being behind the theft. They say the Hamasha clan are in essence lawless criminals who, in recent years, wanted to give themselves an ideological angle or spin, so they became Salafi jihadists and began identifying with ISIS. They say Israel is providing this clan with light weapons and assault rifles, Lieberman alleged, adding that, quote, ultimately, these weapons will be turned against us. So now we have Israel arming and funding and giving cover and protection to an ISIS-affiliated gang that is looting aid inside of Gaza, right? So think back to everything we just heard from this guy, David Mencer, and put it in this context and how utterly deranged his take on it is. Now, we also have here from Ryan Grimm pointing out that this wouldn't be the first time, actually, that Israel, or the United States for that matter, have worked with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. He says here, the U.S. and its ally Israel have now partnered with ISIS or Al-Qaeda in Yemen, Syria, and Gaza, and that's just what we know. And you also can see some images here of some of these reported gang members, some of them wearing Hebrew lettering or Hebrew words on their uniforms or their t-shirts here so that the IDF can distinguish them from other Gazans. Now, again, this is coming in the context of towards the beginning of this genocide. This was one of the main go-to lines that you would hear from guys like Benjamin Netanyahu in order to try to invoke some sort of fear in Western audiences. He would say Hamas is ISIS and ISIS is Hamas, right? Now, again, the reason he was doing this is pretty simple. Right, ISIS is known as the most notorious or violent or extremist or however you want to put it, terrorist organization in the world to Americans and to Western audiences, right? So he's trying to invoke those same feelings and that same association in Western audiences when it comes to Hamas. Now, there are so many different reasons that we don't need to get into here as to why it makes absolutely no goddamn sense whatsoever to say that Hamas is ISIS and ISIS is Hamas. In fact, if anything, Hamas has been fighting ISIS and has been against ISIS for a very long time. And it's actually been Israel that has, in some circumstances, partnered with ISIS. So the irony of that, I think, speaks for itself. And we've now come full circle, starting off with Hamas is ISIS to now we must arm ISIS in order to fight Hamas. Now, moving on here. We again have this report from Jeremy Diamond over at CNN doing some solid journalism here and exposing the various lies that we got from Israel in the wake of these aid massacres that have been happening on a regular basis now. So let's go ahead and jump in to a little bit of this video here.
Palestinians take cover as pulses of automatic gunfire crackle overhead. Others try and crawl to safety as explosions ring out. For several hours on Sunday, this was the terrifying reality hungry Gazans faced as they tried to reach an American-backed humanitarian aid site in southern Gaza. We are bringing our food drenched in blood. We are dying to get food, Amin Khalifa says amid a hail of gunfire. The aftermath is grisly. Bullet-riddled bodies lie scattered on the beach. As others emerge carrying sacks of aid these men died trying to get. Health officials and doctors report at least 31 were killed. 17 eyewitnesses told CNN it was the Israeli military that opened fire on the crowd. A CNN analysis of video from the scene, audio of gunfire, and ballistics evidence all point to the Israeli military. In Gaza, more families made to mourn. They lure us in just to kill us there, this man says. What's happening is wrong. Wrong. Why? Why are they doing this? We go there just to get our daily bread, and they kill us. In the pre-dawn hours of Sunday, masses of Palestinians began trekking down Al-Rashid Street, hoping to be among the first to reach the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site in Tal al-Sultan before limited aid supplies run dry. But as they reach the Al-Alam roundabout, a hail of gunfire forces people to the ground. Eyewitnesses say much of the gunfire came from tank-mounted machine guns.
We asked a forensic audio expert to analyze the gunfire in that video, and this analysis shows bursts of gunfire at a rate of 15 rounds per second. Weapons experts say that's consistent with the FN mag, a machine gun used by the Israeli military and commonly mounted on Israeli tanks. Those experts say that rate of fire also appears to rule out weapons used commonly by Hamas. And then you have bullets like this one, which doctors at Nasser Hospital pulled from the bodies of the dead and the wounded. Weapons experts also say this bullet is consistent with the FN mag.
The Israeli military said they did not fire at civilians while they were near or within the aid site. But that statement is misleading. An Israeli military official acknowledged Israeli troops did fire toward people about 1 kilometer away from the aid site. The Al-Alam roundabout, where people were killed, is also about 1 kilometer away from the site. This entire area, with an Israeli military base right here, is under Israeli control. This post warns the Israeli military would be active in the area at the time of the shooting. It's from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which operates the aid site and closely coordinates with the IDF, alerting Palestinians that using the passage before 5 a.m. is prohibited. But they posted it at 4 a.m. as people were already being fired upon. Eyewitnesses described volleys of Israeli military gunfire from snipers, tanks, and drones beginning as early as 3 a.m. on Sunday. More were shot at 4:30 a.m. Others described being shot as late as 6:30 in the morning.
So listen, guys, you cannot trust as a default literally anything that comes out from the IDF. In fact, you'd probably get closer to the truth and to reality if you just flipped on its head every single thing that comes out in press statements from the IDF. In all likelihood, it's the exact opposite of whatever they're claiming, right? They tried to play this off as though they had nothing to do with this at the beginning. And then they make the claim, as David Mencer was putting in the first video we watched through, oh, they were walking towards us in a threatening way. I mean, guys, further in this video, we're looking at children here. We're looking at children who have been shot in the stomach. Was this child a threat to Israeli forces? This child was so menacing that they had no choice but to fire on a huge crowd of Palestinians desperately seeking aid. Listen, at the end of the day, this is the purpose of how they have structured this so-called aid distribution. The purpose is to make it chaotic. The purpose is to give Israel some sort of a justification to fire on crowds like this. These are killing sites, much more so than they are aid distribution sites. You also had David Mencer and many others who I've seen over the last couple of days bragging about the fact that they got 7 million meals to Gazans over the course of a week. Right? Now, assuming that that number is accurate, which we don't have verifiable evidence to say that it is, and assuming that the aid was evenly distributed to the entire population, which it wasn't, and also assuming that the aid was actually useful and was stuff that Palestinians could consume, that was nutritious and that would meet their needs, which it wasn't, even assuming all of those things to be true, which they aren't, that would still only be, per Gazan, 3 meals over the course of a week. Think about how long you would be able to last operating on 3 meals over a week. So even their bragging point, that in and of itself is packed with lies and dishonesty, is nothing to brag about. It's an utter and complete failure if the goal is to get aid to the population that you've been starving, but at the same time, it's an utter and complete success if you realize that the goal here is not to distribute aid, but is to essentially play this game of genocidal musical chairs and shuffle the population around in order to, in some case, justify these kinds of massacres, and in other cases to push them further and further south, at which point you can then carry on with the so-called Trump plan, as Israel is calling it, or in other words, a mass ethnic cleansing and pushing the entire population out of Gaza from the south in Rafah. So from that angle, if you understand that that's actually the goal of how they're setting all of this up, they are succeeding, because this is exactly what they wanted to do. Now, we also had a report here from Forensic Architecture that's been doing great work over the last number of months, pointing out the many different instances just over the last couple of months in which Israel has either fired upon or has attacked areas in which they told Palestinians to evacuate to, right? So a little bit on that here. They say, FA has documented a pattern of Israeli attacks on areas into which they have previously instructed civilians in Gaza to evacuate. They say, our research confirms that the Israeli military carried out multiple attacks in areas towards which civilians had been directed, either on the same day as the evacuation order or on the day after. So a couple different examples here. Number one, on the morning of the 23rd of March of this year, the Israeli military issued an evacuation order for Tel El Sultan, a neighborhood in Rafah, directing civilians to move northeast. That evening, there was then an airstrike northeast of Tel El Sultan in Khan Yunis that hit the Nasser Medical Complex, the largest hospital in the area. They go on to give several other examples, pretty much exactly like this, where they are attacking on the aid sites or on the locations in which they're telling people to go. And this has been consistent throughout the entirety of this genocide. There's never been a real safe zone. There's never been a real humanitarian area that people are safe from the Israeli military. Now, we move on here. Ryan Grimm posting this video that was, or part of this video, that was put out by the IDF. Now, this is outside of the European Gaza hospital, and they're putting out this video to justify what they then later did, and I'll show you this video here in a second, which is to raid the hospital and essentially take it over. Right now, this is a hospital that's already been attacked multiple times. It's essentially been brought to its knees. It's no longer functioning or anything, but I just want to watch through this video to get a sense of how the IDF does these kinds of videos and how absolutely shady these kinds of justifications are. So let's go ahead and jump into this first one here. I'll put it down at really low volume here, if anything. So they start out by identifying we're outside of the Gaza European Hospital. They have a drone that's going to look down what appears to be sort of like an air shaft here, right? Now notice something. They're claiming, I guess, that this is a sort of tunnel down into Hamas tunnels, where there are allegedly command and control centers at the bottom of this tube here. Now, notice again how there's no ladder here, right? There doesn't seem to be any sort of mechanism for somebody to go down this or to come up this, unless you believe that Hamas militants can fly, which, I don't know, may be something that the Israeli military is trying to claim. But they start sending this drone down what appears to be this air shaft here, and then there's a jump cut, right? So already, notice how shady this is, right? If you wanted to, right, if what you're claiming here that there's a Hamas command and control center directly underneath this hospital, if that's accurate, why did you cut the video? Why did you just do a mega jump cut from where you start out in this air shaft and then suddenly we're in a tunnel underground, right? Is that not shady as fuck, right? It continues, it shows a little bit of the underground tunnel network here. Then we have another jump cut to where we're now in a room where they're outlining that there's some sort of an assault rifle, it looks like right there. I don't know if that's like tissue boxes on the counter and some other things in the background. And then another jump cut, and now we're in a different room here, another jump cut. We're back in the tunnels. I mean, this shit is all over the place. It's all over the place. Now, he also put down here, Dr. Adam Hemaway, a doctor, an American doctor who had done multiple rotations in Gaza, responded to this video. And so here's what he said. Again, this is an American doctor who worked inside of Gaza. He says, the footage of the so-called tunnels is laughable. It's a weak attempt to discredit what I and hundreds of doctors and nurses have consistently testified to after working inside the European Gaza hospital and other hospitals. Israeli attempts to discredit these medical spaces with vague, unsupported claims are part of a broader campaign to suppress the truth and to try to discredit the alarming testimony that I have provided, as well as hundreds of other international healthcare workers who have been there and worked in these facilities. We've been calling for independent monitors from the beginning. Why are they so afraid of verifying? And he's 100% correct there. Now, we also have, again, the follow-up video here, which is of the Israeli military actually doing the raid. Now, again, this is bizarre, as Ryan points out here. He says, for some inscrutable reason, the IDF is now sharing video of its forces raiding the European Gaza hospital. The footage shows zero fire coming at them and shows not a single militant anywhere, just Israeli troops raiding the hospital. And he says it looks like almost like a training video. So you can see if we scroll through this, where are the Hamas militants? This is a command and control center? Where's it at? Where's the infrastructure? Where are the militants? I mean, this is a kind of level of propaganda that we're at. Now, I tried to look for more, guys. I tried to look for maybe a fuller video or one that shows the connection points or anything. This is the best that I got. This is here from Ynet News. And again, it's almost worse when you see it in its totality. So they start off here. Notice how many animations there are, how many graphics there are, as opposed to consistent, one-track videos throughout this. So we start off here with an overhead view. They outline the European hospital. There's a school, and another school. Then we zoom in here. We get down. Now we're jumping into, apparently this is allegedly right here, but we don't know that. It's unverified. Jumping down into a tunnel, where again, we're down here, then we're in a room, the same room that we saw in that first video. Then we jump cut to a different area, it looks like, where there's just a bunch of trash everywhere. Then another thing here, maybe there's some supplies in there, again, unclear. Then we continue with the animation. Now we're just going full CGI, right? This isn't even a drone video. You didn't even do one of the jump cuts to a real tunnel. Now we're just doing full animation where they show an animated, I guess, Hamas command and control center. If this exists in the place that you say that it does, why don't you have video of it? Why are you animating this? I mean, if it was true that there is a real Hamas command and control center underneath this hospital, which I still, even if that was true, I still don't think that that would justify rendering this hospital completely defunct, right? And pushing hundreds of patients who desperately need care out of the hospital and attacking doctors and nurses as Israel has been doing. I still don't think it would justify it. But if this is real, and this actually does exist, why the fuck are you animating it? Why would you make it more shady than it has to be? So total animation here, I mean, just bizarre. Then we zoom out, again, animated, to another overhead shot. Now we're jumping back in to this room where there's allegedly an eliminated Hamas militant there, which wasn't shown in the first video that we saw of where this same weapon was stashed with the tissues on the table. So I'm not sure why this body wasn't in the same location in the earlier video, unless I missed it. Then we have another alleged Hamas militant there. And then we're continuing to do jump cuts throughout the tunnel network here. And then we do a jump cut. This is almost the most bizarre part, to reportedly they're dragging out the body of a top Hamas militant at the end of this here. What is going on here, guys? You cut out to where now You've excavated this huge thing. Again, it's unclear what's even going on down here because you won't show a full walkthrough video of whatever you're doing. And then you're just like dragging this body out from this excavated area. And it's for some reason, the video's starting when he's already right here. Guys, I don't know. I mean, if you wanted to make the case, if you believed Israel's claims here that this Hamas command and control center actually does exist underneath this hospital, they're not doing you a good service, right? This is not a convincing piece of propaganda that they're putting out here to justify it. So I guess I'll leave you guys to make your own conclusions as to whether or not their claim on that is valid. Now, in the same time, we also have the continued attacks on Gaza's medical system and specifically medical workers. So here from Dropsite News, as we finish up this video, they say Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich recently declared that Israel was now targeting Gaza's civilian governance, just fully announcing that we're going to commit a bunch of war crimes by killing a bunch of civilian workers who are not militants. This includes medical workers, finance officials, and others. And today, this is from a couple days ago, but at least 4 healthcare professionals were targeted and killed by Israeli airstrikes on their homes in North Gaza. So specifically going after each of these medical workers here. We have Sultan Kader, who is a 5th-year medical student at the Al-Azhar University. We have number 2, the chief nurse Deeb al-Bach, who was killed along with his children, Noor and Reem, and his brother Tashin, when an airstrike struck his home in Jabalia. We also have number 3 here, Ida Kader, the head of the midwifery department at the General Administration of Nursing, Ministry of Health, who was killed with nearly 50 members of her family in an airstrike on her home in the Al-Jurn neighborhood of Jabalia. And then finally, number 4 here, we have nurse Fatin Kader, also affiliated with the Ministry of Health, who was among those killed alongside her sister. So listen, guys, they fully openly laid it out for the entire world to see, right? It's not difficult to understand what Israel's goal is here. You have the finance minister who's openly and proudly saying, they're not even playing the game of, oh, well, these are actually secretly Hamas militants. He's just saying, we're going after the civilian governance, right? We're going after the government officials. We're going after the financial officials. We're going after the medical workers. And this comes after we've had countless attacks on Gaza's medical workers, whether it's paramedics who are trying to go and pull people from the rubble, whether it's doctors, whether it's nurses, whether it's all of the above, right? We've seen repeatedly targeted attacks as well as kidnappings from Gaza and reports of doctors and medical workers being tortured in some of these Israeli torture dungeons. So again, not difficult to figure out what exactly their goal is here outside of completely destroying the Gaza Strip and making it unlivable for Palestinians. Now, final thing here, we have Haaretz reporting once again that Israel's expulsion of Palestinian communities in the West Bank is hitting a record high with U.S. support. And this is from just 2 days ago. So as the genocide in Gaza is continuing unabated with full U.S. support, you also have the continuation of the slow-rolling ethnic cleansing in the West Bank that is also continuing unabated and, if anything, escalating with U.S. support. And meanwhile, here in the United States, what is our government up to? Are we considering sanctions? Are we considering restricting weapons to Israel? No. The House is now preparing to vote next week on a resolution that would deem Free Palestine to be an anti-Semitic slogan. And they slipped this into a bill that was to condemn the recent Colorado terrorist attack, where a man attacked people who I think were protesting for Israeli hostages. So if you vote against that, then you'll also, I guess, be pro that Colorado attack, which is, one of the cynical games that I guess they're playing in order to get this passed. But this is what our government is doing, right? As we're now 19 months in to our government being fully and totally complicit in this genocide in Gaza, our government is saying that Free Palestine as a slogan is anti-Semitic.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying